So, I just finished Suicide Squad, killed the Justice League, and well, I got some things to say about this game. And now, yes, I bought the deluxe edition to get a few days early access just for this video, I guess. And to be perfectly frank with you, sort of wish that I hadn't, now that I really think about it, because it definitely wasn't worth the extra money. And I'm gonna get into why. And naturally, there are several reasons for this, and I'll get into that as the video goes on. And I think my biggest problem, or well, one of my biggest problem has to do with the story, and I'll get into some spoilers later on in the second half of the video. Okay, so first things first, the game actually runs pretty well. Now, I got myself a pretty monstrous PC last year, and so I'm equipped with, for example, a 4090 graphics card. So even if it performed very well for me, the performance for a lot of you guys might be very different. But most of the time, even if I had maxed out all the settings for the game and I ran it at 1440p, I could still usually have around maybe 80 plus to 100 FPS constantly, even in a lot of hectic firefights and when a lot of stuff was going on at the, on the screen. So I wouldn't really, I wouldn't complain too much about the performance of the game. It looks pretty good. It has very few visual glitches, and I didn't really encounter that many bugs throughout the playthrough. There were a couple of times where something happened, like a battle tank that I was fighting just started flipping upside down for some strange reason. And so, there were small bugs like that. It was not a big bug fest, so to speak. I did notice a pretty substantial performance drop whenever I turned on ray tracing, but then again, ray tracing, that's what it usually does. So for most of my playthrough, I kept ray tracing off. Now, for the general gameplay of the game, here's the thing, right? I mostly just played as Harley Quinn. I rarely, if ever, switched between any of the characters. I did try out, of course, King Shark, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot at the start of the game, in the tutorial level, but I never really liked much of each of their playstyles, and I think Harley Quinn is the one that's most similar to any of the former Arkham games that Rocksteady has produced before. So I would say that her playstyle is more like more like Batman. If you're a fan of, the old Arkham games, you're probably going to play a lot of Harley Quinn like I did. Speaking of the general gameplay, I mean, the thing is, I had a lot of fun in the first 2-3 hours perhaps, and then later on it started to quickly taper off, and throughout today, where when I finished the game, I was mostly bored throughout the game because my issue with how the gameplay is that, here's the thing, I was sort of expecting a lot of very similar mechanics to the Arkham games, where you play as Batman, or you switch between characters every now and then from the DC roster, from the Bat family, for example, and so you can do a lot of different moves, and especially Batman has these really cool animations in those games, and just playing as Batman just feels so good in the Arkham games. There's a lot of different gameplay aspects that are, that always makes the Batman experience feel refreshing in a way. But even if I switched around a little bit with the characters throughout this game, there was never really anything that really gave this game that extra spice, because a lot of the game is super repetitive. You're just fighting against a bunch of, I guess, alien transformed humans, and they're just fodder most of the time. There are some small, mini bosses every now and then. There are these, almost like Hulk type enemies that you fight, which are pretty, it's just, they are basically the hardest enemies you'll come across. Different variations of them, but they're not really that much of a problem, just a small annoyance. And then we have like the helicopters that shoot at you from above with like ice bullets that freeze you in place. It can get a little bit annoying. It becomes very boring after a while, because all of a sudden it switches from being this cool, sort of juggle between using different ways to kill your enemies or defeat your enemies, to instead just shooting them in the face. And that is essentially what this game is at the end of the day. There's all the combat is essentially, the most effective combat is just shooting everything, because that is a big thing in this game, is that you keep getting new guns all the time, and You know, sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse than yours, than you already have, and so you progressively do get stronger. But it's like it just gets so repetitive after a while because all you're doing is just shooting bad guys and just jumping from, you know, from point to point. And it's especially with all the noise going on, I think that that's a huge problem because there's just so much shit happening at a point in the game when you're like getting really like the game starts throwing all kinds of enemies at you, or not all kinds, but it just keeps bombarding you with goons, right? And all you do is just shoot him, and it's just way too much visual noise. And speaking of the visual noise, the UI, like, god damn it. And that's also one thing to why I don't like how the progression system works, because essentially, except for that like execution, you unlock that animation sort of that you unlock once. Then it's just straight up, oh, you're just getting higher numbers. And then, of course, it's just a numbers game. And how quickly can you kill this goon with your bullets until it's dead? And I was expecting something a little bit more advanced, I guess, especially since these are the creators of the Arkham games, where combat is extremely gratifying and varied even. So yeah, that was kind of a disappointment. Speaking of that, especially like playing as a Harley Quinn, you know, when you're just running around the city and jumping from rooftop to rooftop, I would say that Harley Quinn's movement it's kind of like a mix between Batman gameplay from the Arkham games and Spider-Man, but worse. Because the swinging has a limit to how many times you can sort of swing, up until you have to like dive bomb to recuperate your stamina, or you have to land completely, which kind of kills your rhythm. And so you need to get good at, you know, traversing with Harley Quinn. But it's also super annoying because the little droid thing supposedly has this limiter where you can just swing twice, and then you need to sort of rest, I guess, or the little droid needs to rest that she uses to swing. But then again, you know, Harley Quinn is by far, in my opinion, like the best character in this game when it comes to gameplay, especially. Gotta mention the music. Not a fan of the music at all. It's just basically all the same track all over again, over and over again. And it's this type of punk rock type music, which I'm not a big fan of. And it plays on repeat, essentially, especially during all the big moments in the game. With all that out of the way, let's go into some of the live service elements. And so right from the get-go, when I started this game, I just wanted to check out what kind of skins there were, so you can switch between costumes, because that's a big thing in the Arkham games that I really loved, switching between Batman's different suits. And there is like 2 or 3 variations you can switch between. None of them are very good. There is one, which is the Harley Quinn Classic, and then there's another version of the classic suit of Harley Quinn, but without the mask on. You can't unlock it through playing the game. You have to buy this costume that just removes the mask from Harley Quinn for $10, essentially. You need to pay $10 to unlock this costume, this variation of a skin. And that's for every, like, all the classic stuff in the game that you may want to unlock. You either need to get the deluxe edition that I bought, unfortunately, or you need to pay $10 to unlock a skin. Which is like 1,000 points of something. I don't remember what the points are called. But man, I was so disappointed when I saw that. I can't just, I don't know, earn this in the game. There are ways to earn different variations of costumes in the game by doing like Riddler challenges. Some of you might remember that from the Arkham games, but they're not very good looking. All of them are pretty meh. And especially for Harley Quinn that I mained, I thought there would be something more exciting, but it's very few and far between. And it's not something that really pulled my attention towards it. The acting performances, I gotta give a big thumbs up towards, because I think every actor in this game did a really good job. I think of all the main cast did an excellent job. Not gonna spoil just yet that there are some other characters you meet that you may recognize from DC Comics that are in this game as well. But from the 4 main cast, which are like Harley Quinn, it's King Shark, it's Captain Boomerang, and of course Deadshot, all of them do a pretty good job. They actually managed to strike a pretty good chemistry between all of the characters, but it is very, very reminiscent of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy films, and it's very, very reminiscent of the Suicide Squad film that James Gunn also made in terms of like tone, right? Because the game is pretty violent. At first glance, you're not going to be like, oh, is this, oh, so this is from the creators of the Arkham games, and they were sort of violent, but not to this degree. There's stuff that happens in this game that's like exploding heads stuff. That's the kind of stuff you'll see here, which reminds me much more of the Suicide Squad movie by James Gunn. Most of the performances in this game, yes, even the Justice League, Flash, I gotta say Flash, the guy who played Flash, I think that's the guy who also played Heimdall from God of War Ragnarok. He does a really good job, actually. It really fits as Flash. I like him a lot. And speaking of that, let's get into the spoilers. As I mentioned, I've been a big DC fanboy since I was a small, teensy Swedish blonde little kid. Superman and Spider-Man were perhaps some of my favorite superheroes up until I was like 4 or 5, and then I started falling in love with Batman because of the animated series, which Kevin Conroy also starred in. So I'm a big fan of DC characters, especially like the Trinity, of course. Wonder Woman I'm a big fan of her as well. Of course, Joker, like most of the characters that are well known, right? And there are a lot of you may have seen stuff that happens in the game. And yeah. There's some things that happens here that makes sense when you think of the title for the game. It's called Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I mean, it's a pretty apparent name, but I was one of those people that thought, oh, they're just going to do this little thing where they don't actually kill the Justice League. I mean, come on, it's the Suicide Squad. They don't have a chance. Spoiler alert. Yes, you do kill the Justice League. You kill each and every member of the Justice League, except Aquaman. He doesn't actually make an appearance, probably saving him from, for live service stuff in the future, obviously. But he does, it's the Flash, it's Green Lantern. Then we have, of course, Wonder Woman. Then we have Superman, Batman. All of them die. And almost everyone dies from your hand. So, is playing as the Suicide Squad. The only one that dies by someone else's hand, that's Wonder Woman, who gets fried by Superman. So here's the thing, right? The main bad guy is not really the Justice League. It's Brainiac, right? And we could all see that from a mile away when they showed the trailer. So we all knew it was going to be Brainiac, right? But the way they handle some of these deaths, it's just, if it's not anticlimactic, I felt like at least one of them was very disrespectful. And I might be, as we say here in Sweden, bicycling in the bathtub. That's actually a saying here, which means that I might not be knowing what I'm talking about here. But okay, you may have seen this already. Batman, right? Batman gets shot in his face by Harley Quinn. She literally executes him, just like that. What I feel about this is that I've been such a big, huge fan of Kevin Conroy ever since I was a kid. I even watched the American version of the Batman animated series instead of the Swedish dubbed version, So he has been a pretty important part of my childhood. And this was his last, as far as I know, this was his last role as Batman. And here's the thing, this could have been Kevin Conroy's idea, just to, have fun with his last role. But man, it just felt disappointing. I wonder if they were trying to make the moment sort of like a gut punch, you're supposed to feel a lot in this moment. I didn't. I just felt like this was, okay, you're killing a corrupted Batman who clearly just he wasn't himself because of Brainiac, but he just gets executed so mercilessly by Harley Quinn. And she has this little monologue before, and then she shoots him right in the head. And it just felt so disrespectful to the character. And I know we've gotten Batman in so many various versions, but this Batman, as far as I could tell, is the same Batman you were playing as in the Arkham games. He gets brutally shot in his fucking head by Harley Quinn. And I don't know how I feel about that. I just felt like they could have ended him in a better way, especially since I think they were dead set on doing the whole kill the Justice League thing. And I haven't even mentioned the whole Superman thing. Because of course we all know Superman, right? He's the most powerful character ever made in fiction, essentially. He is practically unstoppable. And during his boss fight, he has this big monologue where he says like, I can push the planet with my bare hands, and I can do this and that and do that. And you're wearing this like golden kryptonite that's made by Lex Luthor, who actually also makes an appearance in the game. But he makes this this type of crystal, right? And you wear this crystal to sort of make Superman weak. It just felt so extremely anticlimactic because all you do is just peppering Superman with bullets. And then when you beat him, he just slumps to the ground and fucking dies. Oh my god, this is so weird. It's like watching your childhood heroes, right? They're just dropping like flies in this game. And it just feels so anticlimactic every time it happens. Because when you really think about it, like, be very cataclysmic when you're fighting Superman. And the fight itself is, there's stuff happening all the time because he's super fast and he's moving around and he's throwing shit at you, throwing buildings at you and stuff. And so parts of the fight is cool. It's just the way they end. It's like this entire song and dance about killing the Justice League. But at the end of the day, they kind of feel like pushovers. So I don't feel like they managed to capture the power of each of the Justice League members. I think the only one where they actually managed to find that feeling was during the cinematics, where we have things like Wonder Woman and Superman facing off against each other. And then we have the Batman missions where you have to deal with them first before you capture him, because that is what happens. You have to capture Batman. And so I thought those moments in the game were cool, where you're trying to like make it through sort of this dark area where you're trying to make sure that you don't get killed off by Batman or knocked out. And it was sort of a cool callback, I guess, to the Arkham games, where you could sort of feel what the goons were feeling when they were trying to get away from Batman, because he's like moving around everywhere. He's like in the roof, he's right in front of you, and then he disappears and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool when it comes to that. But the entire confrontation with him, not only him, but Flash, Green Lantern, of course, Superman, it all felt so anticlimactic. Even the final fight against Brainiac felt super disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. And here's the thing, right? Technically, this game isn't finished yet. Like, I mean, in terms of, I think I've gotten the ending, or well, I think most people who have played through this game now have said, oh, okay, so I finished the campaign, because then it says, oh, come back for this first season or whatever, where they've teased the Joker and stuff, like a playable character. And the whole point is that you're supposed to find every version of Brainiac there is, which there are like 12 Brainiacs left after you kill the first one, which you do in this game. And then you're supposed to hunt for 12 other Brainiacs, which I guess like translates into 12 seasons or maybe 6 seasons. I don't know, but I'm not interested. That's the thing. Unfortunately, I really hope that this doesn't continue, because this could have been really an excellent game focused on just the single player story aspects, and they could have made a lot of the boss fights more huge. They could have made them feel more important. They could have made the endings to each character more memorable. And I don't know, it just felt like there was no catharsis at the end of this. It's unfortunate. Like, I felt so disappointed when I got to the ending that I just feel nothing. If you're wondering like how long it took for me to finish the game, I think it's like 11 and a half hours. I think I've clocked in almost 12 hours. So yeah, I played a little bit after, finishing the game, but then, 4.5 an hour. So I think it's like 11 and a half hours to clock in for the campaign. But like, a lot of the game is just very forgettable. I barely remember anything. The only thing that's really gonna stick out to me in the future is probably gonna be, okay, Kevin Conroy's final role as Batman is that he gets shot in the fucking head. That's what I'm going to remember from this game. And, creative vision and all that, that's fine. They can do whatever they want. But I personally feel like this is incredibly disrespectful to Kevin Conroy as a voice actor and Batman. Then again, who knows? Maybe it was his idea. Maybe it was something that came from them, talking before he passed away. But I don't know. I don't like it. It doesn't matter because I just don't like how it ended here. I feel like I've had such an emotional connection to this Batman for such a long time that this just ruined a lot for me. And besides that, the game overall is just pretty forgettable. I think we all sort of realized that before we even picked this game up. We have already played through the game, that is. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I'm very curious. Do you guys agree with my take on this? Because I don't know, man. I'm very 50-50 here. I'm severely disappointed. There were aspects that were pretty okay, pretty all right, but there are so many things they could have done so much better, especially like story-wise. This game gets maybe 3 meatballs out of 10. So yeah, that's about it. Have a good one. See ya.